morning and welcome to Fact Check, from where we're going to analyze, break down, and also try to come up with the possible solutions to matters that affect you and me, Common 190. And today I'll be joined by Zoom with a great panelists, including Alan Polika, who is a journalist as well as an analyst, Glenda Achieng, who is a digital content creator in MediaWorks, as well as Vijita Gwenge, who is a journalist, as well as Vinny Pereira, is a reporter in A24 TV. Gentlemen and ladies, good morning and welcome to Fact. Right away, President Uhuru Kenyatta addressed Kenya on matters in regards to coronavirus, where he said so far 246 cases have been reported in the country and 53 people have so far recovered, and also we have recorded a mortality rate of 11 people. Now, one of President Uhuru's directives to caution the vulnerables is that he directed 8.5 billion to be given to the elderly and 500 million given to the disabled. Are those measures enough or more has to be done? Alan Polika, what is your take on that?
Good morning and thank you, Abel. As I echoed before, I want to again repeat this. This is a new pandemic and no one has prior knowledge to this. Hence, I want to commend the government on how it's handling this. Whatever they have done may not be enough in the eyes of the public, but I personally appreciate that because it means the vulnerable and elderly are being remembered, and generally the marginalized people, society is being echoed and is in the back of the mind of our leaders, and it's a good thing in the middle of this crisis.
Glenda, if you can hear me, so far the president has directed that 8.5 billion to be given to the elderly, plus also 500 million given to the disabled. Are those measures enough, or the president has to come up with more measures so that the vulnerable people in our society are to be cautioned?
Okay, I think the president has done something which is really amazing. But the one thing that I try to ask myself every time is, how does the government recognize these vulnerable people? How will I know that this amount of money is supposed to go to this person because this person is vulnerable? How will they know that? So the president has put good measures on board, but how will we know this? How will we know that this money is going to get to these people? How will they know these people? What way will they use to get to these people? So those are some of the questions I've been asking myself. It's a great move. It's a great thing that he's considering the elderly and the vulnerable. How will this money get to these people?
Government said it has started deploying food and other resources to those who are vulnerable in our society. I mean, the kind of method they're using, is it that very efficient that it will reach each and every person in the city?
Yes, thank you very much, Abel. Now, according to me, I think the initiative by the president and the government at large to distribute food to the vulnerable in society is quite a commendable move, seeing that during this time of COVID-19 pandemic, most of people are going to struggle economically and also maybe to get to put food on the table on a daily basis. But now the issue is how has the government identified the group of people who actually need the distribution of food, because some of the people are actually able to sustain themselves during this period, but most of Kenyans are actually going through a very hard time. Now, what I was thinking is if the government could go through the census that they conducted recently, or maybe if they could have a minor data check on the number of people that we have in the country, they could be able to identify the old people. They could be able to identify the struggling communities, the minorities, the marginalized groups, and hence they could be able to properly allocate food to such people without having to make mistakes like distributing food, because maybe many people could come out and start lying that they actually need help, but in real sense they're able to sustain themselves, Abel. So my suggestion is, if there's a way the government could conduct a data check on the census that we have been conducting, or the recently conducted census, the latest one, they could be able to identify these groups of people and also have an age limit. Like they could say we have to distribute food for people say 50 and above, 50 years of age and above, and that way they could be able to, achieve what they're looking to achieve in the near future on matters COVID-19. Abel.
Okay, let me bring in Picken. Bernard Picken, if you can hear me. I mean, the government so far, as people as have recommended, is doing a good job on dispersing such kind of funds to the vulnerable. But how sure are we that the elderly in Mukuru Pandenga in Madare are going to be given those funds? Picken, if you can hear me.
Abel,
Yes.
good morning and thank you for having us this morning here for this discussion. First of all, I think it was a good move for the president to consider the old and disabled because they are most vulnerable, not only to COVID-19, but to other challenges that they pose right now. Because remember that they cannot even move, and they might not have anyone to help them. But now, my biggest worry is how this money can be transferred to this targeted group or persons without landing into other unintended persons. So I think the president wasn't clear about this. And I think there are some measures that need to be done so that this money can benefit this group. For instance, that I know that even the hold normally receive this money through the banks, but you realize that some of them might not be able to travel during this moment. So they can, as my colleague has said, that they can use the data that was acquired during the census or even during the Huduma number, and this money can be transferred to them using the digital platforms. For example, like Safaricom, where this money can be traced and accounted for.
A good point of raised over there. Now let me bring in Bridget Agonga. Agonga, if you can hear me, how sure are we that a 70-year-old and 95-year-old in Mukuru Kwandenga slum in Ugera Matari are going to be given those resources as disbursed by the government? How sure are we? If you can hear me.
Yes, just as my colleagues have said, we should use the process that we used during the Huduma number and the census to distribute these resources to the vulnerable, the disabled.
I think when we took the Huduma number, most of the people were very ignorant, and I believe not everyone had that. Not everyone wanted to get involved in registering for the Huduma number because of the myths that we were hearing people say, and all that. But the one thing I can say, I have a grandmother of mine who stays in Siaya County. She always receives her, do we call it the money they receive when they're old?
Pension.
Hiyo pesa ya wazee, anapatanga hiyo pesa ya wazee. So the way that it is given to them, they can use the same method to give that money to them. I also support the idea of M-Pesa, the one that our other colleague has suggested right here, which is accountable. We can know where this money went to at the end of all this. So I think we need more to be done, more to be explained by the president and the government on what is the best way to handle this money. Because we all know Kenya. We all know the people that we have as leaders. So we need to find a better way which this money can be distributed to the people.
Okay, I get you, Glenda. Now, Alan Polycarp, I mean, as a Huduma number, Gani, if we did undertake that activity the other year, why is it that it cannot be deployed to reach those people, Alan?
Thank you, Abel. I think Huduma Number is a project that never saw the light of the day, and it never fully fruited out. And for that matter, I don't think at this point it will be helpful to us because not everyone really undertook it as compared to the census, which is very viable and quite honest than Huduma Number, I'd say, because Huduma Number, you are not declaring your wealth. But for census, it was so detailed and it gave account of your wealth and where you stay, what you earn, and how you live, how many people you live. I mean, these figures are what that this information is what that helps in configuring out the people who are vulnerable and elderly. And I think that's the system. I think if you're keen, the president mentioned that the census is what will be guiding them in doing this. Through the census, they've established the number of households which really need this help. And I think if they use that information, it will be really viable and help out in distribution of this. And I also like to mention, Abel, that the 500 million that the president promised disabled is not part of a new kitty or something. This is money that is in arrears. He even mentioned it that the 500 million is money that is in arrears. What is being issued now is the 8.5 billion. And I think if you've noticed, there's been pension earlier on and stuff of that kind for these people. It's not that it gets lost somehow or something. I believe I think we should just have faith in the government and the system that will be implemented in place to supply to ensure these funds reach the people, because at the end of the day they have to be accountable and bring out receipts, because as a people we're
Okay,
waiting to see.
Alan, allow me to interrupt you. Sorry for interruption. I've only been limited to 8 minutes so that this meeting can end. So before we reach to that point, I want to bring in Benny Kirila. For KCP and KCC candidates, the president said the Ministry of Education will mitigate any negative effects to those students, but should Uru's address have more clarity like fee payment? Rira, what's your take on that?
Yes, thank you again, Abel. Now, on matters KCPE and KCSE, I believe this will be the education sector will. The education is actually one of the most affected sectors currently, and will be the most affected sector in the near and distant future. This is because, first of all, learning was paralyzed since the outbreak of the COVID-19 after it was announced in Kenya, and the students were directed to come home, and they have been at home for about, I think, more than a month or two right now. And according to the cabinet secretary, Professor Magoha, we're not quite sure when the schools are yet to resume. So on matters KCP and KCSE, I think if not being cancelled, they should be postponed. One, because students have lost quite a lot of content, and will continue losing much content, seeing that not all of them are able to access e-learning while at home. We saw the other day there's still students out there in Kibera and other areas in the country who are not able to access learning at all. Some of them don't even have books and adequate resources that they should use in their learning. So KCP and KCC, I think this at the end of it all, I believe that the Ministry of Education will have to push the exams forward, probably to maybe next year, sometime next year, or maybe they could just improvise a way when students go back to school, they can be able to do massive learning at a go, especially Form 4s and Class 8.
Okay, Bernard Keegan, if you can hear me, students are wondering, are they going to sit for the examinations come end of the year? I think should the president be more precise when matters education are concerned? Because even some to parents, they are wondering, what about fee payment? Keegan, what's your thought on that?
Concerning this issue of education to the students, I think actually as just the CS for education, Professor Magoa said, and he urged the parents and students not to be worried of the because their safety is important than anything else, and he even said that dead people don't take exams. So I think that's very important. And these year candidates should also be reminded that they are not the only ones who have been affected. That even if at some point their exams should be pushed forward for some time, that um, that can also balance with the others, because you realize that even the students in colleges and universities are also at home, and they need to extend their semesters for a couple of weeks or even some months. So I think everything will adjust. But now what we need to remind ourselves is that sometimes back, I think Jubilee government issued some tablets or laptop to students. So that could have been now the best method for e-learning, that you can have some of the education lessons act through the TV or even through that laptop. But since that program failed, that way now we can realize the loopholes, that things that need to be done, that were need to be done, that needed to be done before, and we can see now the impact, the negative impact of such programs.
Okay, Keegan, I can get your point. Due to time constraints, we'll go to the next question. Then I'll bring you in. Kenyatta University students in 2020 letters that are now being used to combat corona. Is it approved that Kenya has capability to have a manufacturing plant in the country? Glenda?
That was a good idea, yes. but it should not be one thing that we want to depend on fully. Let's not put our whole trust in that. We need to consider other options. This is just something new. The way they say cheap is expensive, we might regret later. Because this is just something that's new. This is just a new invention. It has not been nisemeaje, hawajaichunguza vizuri wajue if it's gonna work completely well. So we need to consider other options. It's a great idea. I support the students. They've come out with something that's really, really amazing. But are we sure it's gonna support us? Are we sure it's gonna work for the longest time that we need it? So I think we need to use it, but you can still consider other options.
Alan, Kenya as a country, do we have that capability of carrying out a manufacturing plant?
Thank you. Kenyans have always been a very creative and technologically informed demographic, and we've always created meaningful and exemplary items. But when you think of it as a manufacturing docket, I feel you're not yet ready for that, as a lot of funding and testing goes into that. And I feel in this current situation and considering the kind of equipment you're talking about in aid of coronavirus, we don't have the luxury of time. So for COVID-19, I feel we still lag behind and we wouldn't encourage that. And maybe afterwards, after the pandemic, then maybe the government should consider funding and investing on manufacturing for these ideas that our youth have. But for now, I think that's a no. It shouldn't be a go ahead for that.
I get your point, Alan. I get your point. Now, Benny Kirira, the president said that the measures that they have put in place so far are effective. The numbers, I mean, they keep increasing each and every day, as been updated by CS Mtai Kagwe. Why is the curve not flattening? Kirira, why is the curve not flattening?
Abel, I believe first I would like to generally commend Kenyans and commend the government for every measure that has been put in place, and for Kenyans also following the directives by the Ministry of Health to keep safe and keep COVID-19 at bay. Now, looking at the country at a whole as a whole, yeah, we are now at 246 positive COVID-19 cases, and it has been 1 month and 14 days since the first case was announced in Kenya. I believe the government is doing quite well. I would like to say so. Although we see that the curve is not yet flattening, but it is. I believe it is gradually working. Seeing that so far we have 246 cases. Some countries out there actually announced like 246 cases in a day. You see, we had like thousands of cases in a week or so, and hundreds of thousands in a month. But so far, the country, Kenya, has really tried to curb the spread of the COVID-19 virus. But also, I believe out there we still have thousands or maybe hundreds of cases. And seeing that CS Mutai Kagwe is working day and night to make sure that this is worked properly with. He's working with the Ministry of, he's working with the government at large and working with the police to make sure that Kenyans actually stay home. Now, what I would like to add is that the government should focus on distributing masks, distributing sanitizers. We saw the other day they were processing sanitizers to be handed out for free, but frankly, I don't think